Welcome back to another episode of the B2B Founder Podcast. I'm your host, Brett Trainer. Today, enterprise sales rep turned stand-up comedian turned sales trainer, Jon Selig joins the podcast. This is a really interesting conversation. Jon's unique approach helps founders and their sales teams break through the noise when prospecting by using humor. Jon shares how to craft effective jokes specifically for your clients and their industries, and it has been highly effective for his clients. We also talk about the parallels between stand-up comedy and sales. What exactly is a joke? Great comedians and founders stick to what works, and creating excellent content. If you want to know more about this refreshing take on prospecting, this episode is for you. Enjoy, and now on to the interview. Hey, good morning, Jon. Welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me, Brett. Good to be here.
No, it's my pleasure. I've been looking forward to this. I believe that you will be the first stand-up comedian that I've actually had on the podcast, or at least the one that have admitted to it. So welcome.
Thank you. There is a lot of pressure on me at this point. I figured you'd had 7 or 8 by now and that this would be old hat. But hey, listen, I'm here to break the ice and break the mold, shall we say.
No pun intended. Yeah, that's it. It's funny. The B2B Founder Podcast, we've got comedians, but literally what I like about it is, and we'll get into, before I get into it, I'll get us into a rabbit hole before we make the introduction. But
Right.
why don't you give the audience a little bit of your background, what you're working on, and then we'll dig in.
Yeah, it's a half fallacy, half truth that I am a stand-up comedian. I actually sold technology for 12 years, a lot of that time in the Oracle economy. Done everything from cold calling to inside sales to field sales, selling enterprise technology. I've also sold some really Mickey Mouse travel technology because travel was a passion of mine. And I had a whole project in the world of travel and comedy. And that came from the fact that I was really tired of selling enterprise technology and I started doing stand-up. I was kind of like, I don't know if I really want to talk to CIOs about their data warehousing challenges for the rest of my life. No offense to those who love it and make a great living at it.
Absolutely, right.
I just knew that I was not meant to be doing that forever. I started doing stand-up. I got very addicted to the process of it. I said, I am going to get a Netflix special. I just loved writing stand-up. I loved figuring it out live in front of audiences. I even loved failing occasionally, if you can believe it or not, because the failure would help me understand how to succeed. And I'd practice, I'd rewrite everything. I found myself growing, and it was the first thing I was caring about in a very long time, because the worst you can lose in stand-up comedy is a little bit of dignity. It's not as big a deal as you think, whereas in sales, if you bomb, you lose your job, right? So the stakes didn't seem nearly as high. And in short, I kind of just was doing stand-up for a long time, and I was like, I kind of miss money. I became very nostalgic for it. And so I decided to marry my backgrounds of stand-up comedy and sales. And when I was doing stand-up, right after the gate, I'm like, this is a sales job. Getting up in front of a room full of strangers whose arms are folded, getting them to buy into me and my ideas, those are 2 separate concepts on their own, that's a lot to overcome. And I really started to realize there's a ton of parallels between sales and stand-up. I started to watch a lot of bad stand-up comedians, and I started to watch why they don't connect with their audience. And I realized it's because they have no clue what the audience wants, and they have no clue to sell themselves. And I just started to see all these parallels. And I also realized that, you know what? I'm telling jokes about very niche topics to stand-up comedy audiences. There's no reason why salespeople can't be telling niche jokes to their buyers.
Yeah, no, I love it. I think the parallels are crazy, right? Because the bad, and there's air quotes, sales reps don't connect, right? They're just pitching and features and benefits. And, if a stand-up comedian's going that way, just talking about and I'm making up, I'm not a comedian, topics of the day, right? It's not going to connect, right? So I think at the root of it makes perfect sense that if you don't know who your buyer is, you don't know who your audience is, the chances of you connecting, I'd rather not put that to chance and have a plan or a strategy or a process for it. So no, I think it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and something I really came to this realization was when I was selling enterprise technologies to CIOs, let's say in manufacturing, I've never used a data warehouse. I've never built one. I've never used the tools that are used to build it. I've never had the job of a CIO, and I've never worked in manufacturing. Yet I'm supposed to call them up out of the blue and tell them how much I'm going to change their life. So most sales reps sell stuff they've never used to people whose jobs they've never had, industries they've never worked. And it makes it really tough to relate. And we have really short windows to relate and connect with people. And a properly crafted, really good joke that shows a lot of understanding and insight can be that connecting tissue. And that's kind of how I help sales teams.
Yeah, and I think too, I know you focus a lot on sales teams, but I know you work with founders, and I think the messaging from marketing makes sense. And for the audience thinking, all right, I'm a founder, start a founder, I'm thinking about starting a business. Why is this important to me? Well, you kind of mentioned, right? Life, sales is life.
Yeah.
And if I'm looking at a founder, if I'm looking to raise money, right? How do I connect better with investors? Or something we talk about on the show quite a bit is, founders and their passion, have a, I don't say easy time. There's no easy time selling, but an easier time selling into their network with the relationships they know and the passion they have for the project or product. But once they try to expand beyond, that network or bring somebody in to help sell or market, it's a whole different ballgame. And a lot of these companies and founders struggle. So that's why I thought, man, what a perfect, I don't want to call it segue, but a reason that to have you come on the program and think about it differently than maybe the way they're doing it today.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and it's interesting that you bring them up. I have worked with some founders at a couple of incubators here in Canada. Full disclosure, I'm not in America, the north of your border, and you're right. They often have real passion for their business. So very often they come from a technical background, and they've stumbled onto some niche idea that does have market potential. People do see their potential and are willing to invest energy and time into them. But sometimes they lack the communication skills. Sometimes they lack the relatability, and sometimes they flat out, lack the business background to really articulate why they matter. Like the so what, who cares, right?
Right.
Like they'll tell you, "Hey, I've invented an AI-driven engagement platform that 10x the scalability." And it's like, all right, I don't know what that means. Like an investor, that might sound cool to an investor, but at the end of the day, where's the business opportunity? Where's the problem you're solving? Help me understand the market a little bit better. And just even going through the process of writing jokes, forget the jokes themselves. The process of writing jokes is trying to understand your audience's emotions and figuring out how to build that connecting tissue to them so that you can switch on, you know, I shouldn't use the word switch on a switch with your audience, either get them laughing or even being afraid of something through a joke, get them loving, hating, tap into their loves, their hates, their fears, their wants, their needs through a joke. But even if you don't write the joke, you sort of have to go through the exercise of understanding those emotions and how the problems that you solve map to those emotions.
Yeah, and that's what I love about that is you're forced to, and we'll get into kind of what your process is for doing this without giving away the farm, so people go download your content. But I think if you don't understand who your prospects are and how do you cut through the noise, a joke or humor, and maybe the first thing you should probably clarify is, what is a joke, right? Because we're talking a little bit offline, why the chicken cross the road, and you probably have sales managers going, "Oh my God, no, I don't want them to learn it." But that's not what you're doing, and that's why I think it's unique. And what are the other ways you're going to cut through the noise, right? Without humor or jokes, are you going to go super serious? So rambling a little bit, but I think you know where I'm going with that is, the best way to think about that when you're tying. Well, I'll go back to my original question. What do you define as a joke, and how do you work that in with founders, sales teams, etc.?
Yeah, exactly. So a lot of people, and I appreciate you jarring my memory because this is something I realize I need to clarify a hell of a lot more for people. So shame on me for not knowing my audience and thinking they know what a joke is for the last 3 years. Look, we're all familiar with street jokes, like you said, a chicken crossed the road, three members of a particular clergy walk into a particular establishment and see this, and those aren't the kind of jokes that I'm talking about at all. If you watch a stand-up comedian, they have the moment they get on stage, they have like 20 to 30 seconds to really connect with the audience and really make them laugh. And if they don't do that within the first 20 to 30 seconds, the audience's faces will light up, but not because they're having such a great time, because they're on their phones.
Right.
And just as a hint, we go back to comedy shows in case you're sitting at home hiding from the pandemic. When you're on a comedy show and you're on your phone, comedians can see you from the stage on your phone. We know that you just don't care, and we die a little bit inside as you with each tweet.
Favorite comedian, right? Pay attention.
Yeah, exactly. But coming back to the question, so that comedian has 20 to 30 seconds. We have to be really short and punchy and say something that's relatable to the audience and memorable. And we have to connect with their emotions. And so a good joke is really just, if you look at old school Twitter, it was 140 characters. The best jokes were coming from Twitter because they were super short, super brief, and packed a lot of insight, information, and relatability into them. So a good joke should be like one sentence that's the setup to the joke, and the punchline comes along and subverts the expectations of the setup. The listener thinks, oh, they're talking to me about a new pharmaceutical technology, and then the punchline comes along and either subverts the expectations of the point they thought they were going to make. So it should be no more than, setup can be two sentences, and then a punchline should come along. So in short, a good joke should be really short, really quick, to the point, and just make a powerful business point.
Yeah, no, I love it. And the other thing I'm a huge fan is of the process. And again, I can't claim to be a comedic expert, but I know, right, and you and I have talked a little bit that, joke writing is a process. It's not, hey, stand up and be funny. Maybe some people are natural and can wing it, but in overall, most comedians, right, go through a process of joke writing and building a set, and the whole thing's not too dissimilar from what you're doing with your messaging and how you connect with your prospects.
Well, if you've ever sat through, a really good presentation, whether it's from a founder, whether it's from someone at a conference, or a salesperson going through, let's say, a 30-minute deck and hitting all the marks, when you watch a comedian at a club, sure, they might veer off script a little bit to address a heckler or just call out an elephant in the room. But overall, they have a script, and they've worked that script to death. They've honed it and refined it. They've tried it and honed it and iterated in comedy open mics, brought it to smaller shows, and then they're doing the bigger stages. And so by the time you see a comedian who's doing a headlining set and they have, let's say, 45 minutes, it's all stuff that they know works. They're not making anything up off the top of their head. And the best comedians never veer off script because people respect them and they're listening, and they don't want to heckle them. They don't want to distract them. They're very into what's happening. And the comedian is able to deliver the art that they've performed. And great salespeople, should really understand their own, or great founders really need to know their own script. And I don't mean script in a scripted way, but their own story, right, just as meticulously.
Yeah, no, I'm a big fan. I mean, I think we've seen it, especially in the sales world, right? You could have 100 different sales reps. They're doing it in 100 different ways. And each of those 100 have probably 12 different ways that they try to do things. And there's no, I call it the last of the wild, wild west, right? Have a structured approach or a process. And again, to your point, not scripted where thank you for calling, but, have something that's going to allow you to connect with the audience. If you don't, to your point, on the phone, email, social, you may not even have 20 to 30 seconds, right? It's how do I get some attention? So maybe this is a good time to get into, I know you do a lot of workshops, you work one-on, what is the kind of the format? And so if, I'm a founder, I'm a sales team, what's the best way to think about this? Even if they want to DIY it and go through the process, maybe you could kind of share, what's your approach to this process?
Yeah, I mean, there's books that teach people how to write jokes, and you could go buy one and go through it, but you might never write it. You might follow the steps and do all the homework that they require, but you might never write a funny joke. I always believe that joke writing is writing jokes and understanding if they're funny needs feedback. And so I run and facilitate trainings and workshops where primarily sales teams, I work primarily with sales and marketing teams, where they go through a bit of a training with me, and then I guide them through various steps, get them answering certain questions about who their buyers are, what problems do they solve for their buyers, what could happen if they don't solve the problem, and all the good benefits of going with your solution. And then ultimately we massage all that into jokes. I show them how jokes work. I show them how to build out their ideas and flesh out their ideas from a creative perspective, and start to draw some parallels and analogies that are very relatable to listeners. And that's usually done not in a silo, but with other people. So whether it's a small kind of class of anywhere from 4 to 8 people, I can help that way. I can also help larger sales teams with workshops.
Yeah, no, and I love it. And I highly encourage people, and we'll get to, at the end of it where people can check out your content. But if you look at the videos, one of the things that I took away is, one, there's value in with the helping with the opening, creating the joke, connecting. But from a team aspect, there wasn't anybody in those workshops that wasn't having a good time with this thing. So I think there's the dual benefit. Sometimes when you get in training or workshops, yes, it's important. There's good work and there's strategy, but this, I think, had the dual benefit of bringing the teams together, even if it's a small team, as well as actually getting, value out of, what you're going to walk away with, to better connect with your customers and your prospects.
Yeah, and I like working with small groups because it's more intimate and there's more room for everybody to participate. When I work with a sales team of, even more than 10, they do it in breakout groups. I don't want the groups to ever be more than 5 people, because that way voices get suppressed and some people dominate. But there's also there's an important peer learning component that happens in these breakout groups, where they're sharing insights of their buyers and sharing insights of how the problems impact their buyers' lives. And sometimes people have very fixed ideas of why their product or service matters to buyers, but someone else might talk about a completely different use case, and that person was like, "Oh, I didn't know that," and they're swapping information. So there's a knowledge sharing component. Tribal knowledge, I think, is the term that I heard yesterday.
Yeah.
I really like, and it's helping just build their understanding of buyers again, even before we hit the creative process.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. And I know I may be taking us backwards a little bit, but I'm just kind of curious how you put the two together. I mean, I get it from a humor standpoint, but when did you start to see, were you writing jokes when you were still with Oracle, or did you say, you know what, this would be I'm able to connect with my audience, this would make sense in the sales process? I'm just kind of curious how you kind of cross those two disciplines, if you will.
Yeah. So when I was selling Oracle products and services, none of the technology landscape that we see today for sales existed. So it was phone and the odd email. No sequencers, no outreach, no sales law, none of that. Just send the odd email. We weren't even using Mailchimp back then. We're just a lot of phone work and the odd, hey, I'll send you some information. I always knew that the moment they picked up the phone, like I went through all kinds of training. I went through Sandler. I went through just all the trainings, like Spin, who God knows, Oracle. They brought them all in, and I just remember they're always telling you to like get this, do certain steps before you even tell them why you're calling. And I always found that, to be quite honest, customers when they answer the cold call would get really annoyed. And I was just like, just get to it. Like, don't even ask them how they're doing. Don't ask them if they have a few moments. Just like, hey, it's John. I'm with Oracle. We help procurement managers just like you who are struggling with getting purchase orders out to supplier.
Yeah. The company line.
Yeah, to their vendors. Sorry, you can tell that I really don't remember anything about procurement solutions, but it always comes to mind because it's one of the more boring functions within a large company is procurement.
Yeah.
So I love the challenge of making something really boring funny. But in short, I realized I don't have time for all this upfront contract stuff. I just need to, like, within the first 5 or 6 seconds, hit them with like the reason for my call or something relating to their job, and then obviously kind of move in for the question. Is this a problem for you? Are you struggling with this? And so Oracle gives you all these scripts, and I'd follow them, but then I just get so bored with them that I'd start to change it up. I'd look at what city they're in, or if there was something about their last name. So I wasn't writing jokes back then per se in the way that I'm describing currently, but I was always trying to get their attention and be that different cold caller.
Yeah.
And so when I started doing stand up, I realized the parallels were there right away. Like, you don't just get up there and tell a long-winded story, because I sat through a lot of people getting on stage, telling a 4-minute story with like one laugh, and they're hoping for the one big laugh at the end, and like no one cares. Like I told you earlier, people
Yeah.
check out really early if you're not making them laugh. They're at a comedy club. They're not at a storytelling club. They're not at an anecdotes club. They're there to laugh every
Right.
30 seconds. And so again, you can't wait 30 seconds in a cold call to make someone laugh, but the structure of writing jokes, which I started to pay more attention to probably about a year or two into doing stand-up versus just getting up there and telling something kind of funny.
Be funny. Right.
Yeah, just be funny. I started to really write jokes, and I realized a couple of things. Comedy itself is moving into an era where comedians can cater to and build niche audiences. So I would get asked to do a show, hey, do you want to do the Star Wars themed show? And I'd be like, well, I'm going to work really hard to write these jokes. And then I'm probably never going to be able to use them again because
True.
as a guy who's like not pursuing a career in comedy, I'm not going to be doing too many more of these Star Wars shows.
Right.
So you're asking for a lot of investment for me to try jokes that probably I put myself at risk too, going up there and not having the timing with the jokes, not knowing my jokes. Because I did a couple of I did a Yo Mama joke competition early on, and that's a little different because the jokes can sort of be extrapolated for other reasons.
Yeah.
But I remember doing like a pop culture kind of like game show thing. And I wrote stuff and I don't remember any of it because I just didn't have a handle on it. And I'm like, this is a waste of time. But there's audiences who want to hear about these niche topics. And every prospect that we reach out to is a micro audience. So if I'm calling up vice presidents of procurement and I have a joke that shines a light on a challenge that a lot of vice presidents of procurements have dealt with over their careers, maybe they're not dealing with it now, but they're going to go, that's funny because it's true.
Right.
And if they are struggling with it right now, all of a sudden you've triggered them and you are now their new therapist and they want to talk to you because you've shown them some insight about their world that no other cold caller has, and you've done it in a way that has been a distraction from their existence.
Yeah, no, that's what I love, right? It is different. Different is better than better, and you still got to be relevant. But now I'm going to put you on the spot, and you can tell me, no, I don't. But can you give us an idea or a kind of a sample of what some of these icebreaker jokes that you use without, again, giving away the company or the secret? But I'm just I think to help the audience understand back to what's the definition of a joke and to actually hear maybe a sample of what you've helped create.
Yeah. Always remember though, that with the jokes I help sales teams write, there's this expression, it's not funny if you have to explain it, but in the case of a podcast like this, you have to explain it for it to be funny because they're not meant for anybody but a particular vendor's prospects, their target persona. So early on, I was actually working not with a founder, but with an SDR, sales development rep at a company. They're called Dynamic Action. And Dynamic Action makes predictive analytics for clothing retailers.
Wow. Okay.
Very specific, very niche. And what problem do they solve? The problem is that large retailers are building their own predictive analytics tools, right? But they're not in the software business.
Right.
And that would be like if Oracle was opening up a big and tall shop.
Got it.
I'll give you another short one.
I like it. And but see that's the funny of it. And so I think that's the important thing for the audience to take away is, again, back to our point of joke. And again, check out Jon's content on site. You'll get a much better sense of it, but it's subtle, but it's funny and it's going to break through the ice. And, I think one of the reasons I really wanted to have you on the show is because that's not my first nature for me. So I would have to work at incorporating this, but, I see the value of doing it. So I don't know if you're the godfather or the pioneer of this trend, but, I'm starting.
I'm the god pioneer.
Pioneer, we'll call it the OG in a couple of years then once it's really picked up. So I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I'm like, it was like, oh, I get it.
Well, because I explained it. If I was just told you the joke, it'd be like, well, I don't get any of it. And that would be perfectly fine because it wasn't written for you. It wasn't written for anybody listening unless they are at a clothing retailer, unless you have listeners who are CEOs or CIOs at large clothing retailers. But here's a good founder joke. And again, this is all contextual and it's really personal, this joke for this founder. This guy's company does something super boring. I'm not going to say their name. I mean, I could. Okay. So it's a company called Cinchi. They actually raised some funding recently. They're out of Toronto. And I was speaking with the founder and we were trying to I was spending like an hour with each founder that I was working with as part of the DMZ's incubator. The DMZ is Ryerson University's incubator accelerator. And so they brought me in and I worked with founders over the course of a day. Just general training kind of stuff. Because at the end of the day, what I do is part sales training and helping them identify how to position important, relatable reasons for their existence to whether it's investors or customers, what have you. And so it's going through the founder's background and more his business actually. And I was just like, man, this is a really boring business. This is really technical. In an hour, I don't know if I could do this, but I just said to him, how did you come up with this idea? And I'll just pretend I'm him. I'm just going to hit you with the joke. So I asked him, how'd you come up with this idea? He says, well, I spent 12 years developing enterprise software at a bank and left when the branch manager kicked me out of the lobby. And so is it like drop dead funny? Debatably. But at the same time, there was a twist to it. And it's also in the delivery. We have these, again, a good joke sets up an expectation.
Right.
So let's say he's pitching for money and, he does a little pitch and one of the investors says, how'd you come up with this idea? He says, well, my background is I spent 12 years developing enterprise software in a bank. And what do we think of when we hear developing enterprise software in a bank? We imagine someone in a cubicle at a tower with a bunch of other developers building large systems. And when we came along and said, but left when the branch manager kicked me out of the lobby,
Right.
It subverts those expectations. And we imagine him sitting in one of those leather chairs waiting for a mortgage officer, to come out.
No, because your brain all of a sudden kicks in and go, whoa, wait, that's not what I was, because you can anticipate what's coming next. It's like reading your own copy over and over again. You know what's coming next, and all of a sudden there's something that puts that little twist in there. That's awesome. So, yeah. And anybody can do this, right? With a little help, a little coaching. The example I was going to give you, and if you've seen Wedding Crashers, it's an old movie now, but the sister of the bride was going to do the toast, and she wrote this joke that she thought was super funny, and the guy was more of the professional joke. I wouldn't do it, right? It's if you have to tell people why it's funny, it's not funny. Almost exactly what you're saying. So I don't mean to compare you to Wedding Crashers, but it keeps bringing me back to that scene, and she goes ahead and does it her way, and it bombs, and then she transitions to the simple twist that he had suggested, and it was a big hit. So
you bring up a really good point. And to answer your question, can anybody write a joke? I'm not going to claim that absolutely everybody can write a joke, but I do believe that the vast majority of anyone who's in sales can learn how to tell a joke that someone else wrote and tell it repeatedly and make it their own and have it land with impact to build better relationships. I think everybody's who's either laughed at a joke, told a joke that they heard from a friend, that they heard a stand-up comedian tell, a line from a movie. I think we've all repeated those jokes
100%
to other people. And if there's something that we can own that will help us start more conversations and have better ones with desired audiences, whether they be investors, early stage clients, or you're selling enterprise technology, I think, look, we're all just people, and people do enjoy a laugh. And in this era of over bombardment of outreach, we got to stand out. And you want your buyer or your audience to open up an email, to take a cold call, and to say, you know what, you earned it. I'm going to give you some more time because you made me laugh, and it wasn't frivolous either. It was related to my job.
Yeah, and you didn't go straight into the pitch and says, "Here's what I do and what we do," and that's why, like I said, I was super excited to get you on the show to talk about this concept, because it hasn't been I've never heard it before, right? I know people use humor, but then when I can't even remember where I first came across what you were doing, but then I dug into your work and said, you got to have this guy on the show, because, if you're looking for that edge and different, I keep saying different is better than better. And, and again, you want to connect human to human, B2B, whatever it is, right? In this day and age, especially in 2020, anything with a little levity is going to be well received, right? So
you'd be shocked when this pandemic started, how there were a lot of people like, now is not the time for jokes. And it's like, it's more than ever a time for jokes, because people are scared, and people can't sit around in their apartments or houses being scared all the time. They need to laugh. They need a distraction. They need that connection more than ever. And, at the end of the day, we're all just people, and the human condition is, we all wrestle with the same range of emotions, and we also need breaks from certain emotions.
From reality, even though reality doesn't seem like reality sometimes. No, 100% with you on that. Yeah. So definitely want to be respectful of your time. I always end with two questions. One is, man, what's next for you? I know we're into Q4 by the time this airs. What are you working on the end of this year and maybe into the early part of next year?
Oh my God, there's like too much on my plate. A couple of new clients that I'm going to be kicking off over the next couple of months and doing workshops for them. The beauty of the pandemic, if you want to call it that, at least for me, is that now I can do things virtually over time. We don't have to do things like where I fly in and we have 4 hours. I can customize programs for teams who want to go whatever pace they want, because I don't believe that great jokes are, or even, articulating who your buyer is, happens in short little windows at sales meetings or at accelerators for a day. It happens over time. So I've really been able to really deconstruct and reconstruct everything I do to reflect, obviously, this new, I don't like saying normal because you're right, it's new, totally messed up, as I call it. I've really figured out ways to offer way more value to clients now, doing things over time, letting them think about things in the shower, coming back and doing some work in between classes, shall we say. There's that. Eventually, I hope to be offering it to individuals. Can't reveal too much right now, but I will be putting something together for individuals to subscribe to what I do and kind of get my content, but also participate in live classes where they could vet their ideas and get some feedback. And doing a lot of live stand-up for companies if they just want to be entertained. And actually, I've raised over $14,000 for nonprofits helping with COVID relief efforts. And the way it works is they pay me something, they give an equal donation to a nonprofit, and I just show up and do 20, 30 minutes of jokes. And what else can I tell you? Those are the big things. It feels like there's something else I'm missing, and just trying to get on radars for the rest of the year in 2021. So
That's awesome. I didn't realize you
not up to anything.
The charity aspect is so cool, and I didn't realize that. So yeah, check that out, and that's more than enough for the next 3 months. And we'll have to have you back on once you launch the solo version of it. But all right, last question, which I ask everybody that's been on the show, is what is one thing that you would highly recommend?
I think people just need to express themselves more and download the information that's in their heads. So good comedians carry around little notebooks with them, or they use the notes app on their phone. And whenever good ideas come to us, we capture them. But I think if sales pros or founders want to relate to their audiences better, ultimately, forget even through humor, they need to just document all their understanding and knowledge in one central repository and all their new learning. Just capture it all, document it all, and feel free to maybe even put some of those thoughts into different buckets and just try to organize your knowledge and thoughts a little bit more, because at the end of the day, I think that'll make you a stronger presenter and salesperson. And it's a good starting point for ultimately transforming all of that into some humor.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I have started doing that a little bit more recently, where I do jot things down as I think about it, because you come up with a great idea. I'll remember that later, never remember it later. So I started using, showing the, bunch of stickies to write it down. Then I transfer it to notes, and ultimately I can work on a better process, but I am following your advice in getting there. So
Notebooks are great. But here's the hard part about notebooks and really everything else, every other medium in which we document stuff. We forget to go back and look at it sometimes.
Right.
I'm joking with myself. I have 7 or 8 notebooks full of my comedy writings. Every now and then I will pick one up and just, hey, I'll go look at that 3rd notebook and go to the 7th page and see what I was thinking about, because those ideas do come back and I could work them into my act. And so maybe those principles can be applied to doing business.
Yeah, 100%. So, well, Jon, thank you very much. This has been awesome. Where is the best place? Obviously, encourage folks to go check out your content. It's really good. Well, where's the best place for folks to connect with you?
Obviously, LinkedIn, and just, hey, folks, my name is Jon, and the H in Jon is both silent and invisible. Code for it's Jon, and my last name is Selig. I'm sure it'll be spelt. I'm sure you guys will see my name when you click the link. And of course, my website, jonselig.com. And you want to check out the different ways I can help. jonselig.com/offerings has an explainer video, 17 takeaways for joke writing, and different ways, the different formats of trainings and workshops I deliver.
Yeah. Now that we've covered the context, now I can say I love the tagline of punchlines to build your pipeline, man. It makes sense. So, Jon, thank you very much for taking the time. I appreciate it. Like I said, I was super excited to have you on. I learned something again today, and again, highly encourage folks to check out what you're doing. It's different. It's working. Check him out. Thanks, Jon.
Awesome. Thank you. And I hope everybody stays safe, healthy, and far away from me.
And here's to 2021.
Exactly. Thanks so much.
All right. Have a good rest of your day. Thanks, Jon.
Thanks. You too.